So the next activity I want to do is installing a zipper. So this is the standard foot that comes with the 3 series, and we have the little lever in the back that pops off the foot. These are called snap-on feet. Now whenever installing a zipper, you're going to do a regular seam at your 5/8. So you'll see here where I stitch at a regular length, 2.5, and I backstitch to secure it. Then when I came to the point where I started to backstitch, I'm going to change my stitch length to a basting stitch. This is where my zipper is going to be. So my zipper, the end of the zipper will be where my basting starts, and the top of my zipper will be where the basting ends. Now you're just doing a regular 5/8 seam allowance. I have pressed it open, and now I'm going to lay my zipper on. First off, let's put our zipper foot on, and it just snaps on. I find it's a bit easier to put the foot on here, push the button in the back, and snaps on. Now I can go ahead. And put the zipper foot on. So what's really important now, I'll just move the camera over here. Again, it's where my back stitches are, and these are all my basting. When I install a zipper, I like to put a little mark there so that I can see where it ends. And I'm just using a water-soluble pen. And here's the zipper that I'm going to install. I always pick a larger zipper than the pattern asks for. A couple of reasons. Here's where the zipper ends. This is a metal piece. You never want to stitch over top of that because you will break your needle. I want to ensure that that is past this mark. Okay. Now I can use a pin or some tape. Let's just use some embroidery tape to tape this down. And I want to ensure that the teeth of my zipper are right in the middle of my seam allowance. Let's turn this around. So as I'm going up, I need to ensure that the teeth are right where my stitch line is. Now I can put some more tape on. Now this is the beauty of having a zipper that is longer than the pattern requires for. If I had purchased the same size as here, I'd have the pull tab right here, and stitching around the pull tab, it can be done. It's a bit difficult. By having an extra long zipper, I can stitch straight without having to worry about the pull tab. And I'll show you how that works. So I'm going to actually be stitching on the top side here. So it's really important to line up my foot. Now here's where we're going to be moving our foot. Now you'll notice that the needle's in the middle because that was my original default stitch before. Whenever you're using a specialty foot, you always want to stitch on the right side of it, not on the left. If I had the bulk of my zipper foot here and I was stitching here, this would be riding on the teeth of the zipper, and it would be very, very, the stitching would be very wobbly. So I want to make sure that my needle's on this side. So I'm now going to move my needle over to the right. That's as far as I can go. So what I've done here is I've tried to line up my seam where I've stitched right on the edge of that. Now if you're worried about stitching a straight line, use some tape. Use some embroidery tape so you have a nice straight line, because you may want to actually stitch over here, but we have no guideline to go by. If I wanted to do that, put this on, I'm going to put 2 pieces of tape on each side. Making sure it's equal distance. So now I can just stitch down here, come across, and up here. So let's make sure that where my line is that I'm going across is marked clearly on there, so I know where to come across. Okay, we're now ready to stitch. And I always like to have my top thread underneath the foot in the way. Now this is going to be covered by another seam, so it's not necessary for me to secure it. Whenever you're crossing a seam with another seam, it will become secure. So I want to make sure I go nice and slow, because when you're doing a zipper, when you're stitching a zipper from the front of the garment, you want to make sure that your stitching is straight. Now if you have a dual feed, that would be perfect to have right now. So I'm coming down to where I want to go across. Now I want to stop with my needle down. But, so I've got to remember my metal plate's going to be here. I'm actually going to count the number of stitches I go across. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it's a little bulky there, 7. Okay, so I'm right in the middle of the seam. I want to make sure I do the same 7 on this side. It's a nice check to make sure. 2, 3, 4, 5. That one went 5. Ah, see, look, my little small stitches here. That's because we have all this bulk here. So let's go up. Needle up, and now we can cut our threads. Not too bad. You would always use corresponding thread. I'm using white just to show you. Not too bad. So what we want to do now, you don't want to cut this yet. We need to get our pull down underneath. So let's take out the rest of our fabric, the rest of our tape. And this tape can be reused, which is really good when you're doing garment construction. I tend to use tape now more than I did with needle pins. So this is my basting stitch. I can go ahead and take out my basting stitch. So when you want to start, you use this to start your one stitch. Once you've got it going, then I'm going to put the bottom ball goes underneath like this. That's how you properly use a seam ripper. Because with the ball underneath, it will not cut the fabric. And make sure you have a seam ripper that has a ball on the bottom. There. Take our little threads. Now I can move this down. And then you would attach your waistband facing whatever you're working on, and then you can just cut these off. You can stitch through the plastic on the zipper. Easy to stitch through, as you saw down here. I could do that. And it's easy to cut with scissors as well. So this is why I always buy a longer zipper. Because when you have your zipper down here and you go to stitch around it, it can be quite difficult to get around this when you're stitching. And I've probably put in thousands of zippers. So just make sure before you cut this off that you've added your facing or your waistband, whatever you need to add, with the zipper pull in the proper area. Not your zipper pull up here, because then your zipper is useless.